Welcome to the Puck and Pigskin Podcast, presented by Belly Up Sports. Just great sports fans talking mostly about hockey and football, sprinkled with a bit of everything else. Now, here's your host, a Flames fan with a Golden Knights backup plan, Jason Bizik.
Welcome back, boys. I had you on, I think a couple months ago, and we're back to talk hockey this time. I'm fired up. How about you guys?
Oh, let's do it.
Getting there for sure. It's coming. It's coming faster than we realize. I'm very excited.
Yeah. So I don't know how excited Clark is. He's a Leafs fan, but
I'm pretty excited. I'm letting
avenge
that whole I'm letting that whole this is going to be our year thing seep in, and I'm just buying. I'm buying right back in again, just like every other year.
Every single year.
So I guess what we'll do first is we'll kind of go through each division and kind of explain the changes that have happened and where we predict the divisions are going to place, where the teams are going to place in the division. So I'll go first with the Pacific Division. And so we're going to start with my team, the Calgary Flames. These are no particular order. So of course we lost Giordano to the Kraken. We lost Derek Ryan. The additions we made, we extended Brett Ritchie. We got Dan Vladar in net now, backing up Markstrom. Big signing. We signed Blake Coleman. Big in some people's eyes, I guess. We re-signed Zadorov, Matt Phillips, Oliver Shillington, Valimaki, Dubé, Connor Mackey. Interesting moves this week they made. We signed free agents Eric Gudbranson, Michael Stone, and Brad Richardson. So safe to say that we've taken care of the heavy lifting on the team. My eyes, I think we're still a little short on scoring. So this season, in the Pacific Division, I got the Calgary Flames finishing third in the division. 1 and 2, I've got Vegas and Edmonton. Vegas won, Edmonton second, and Vegas, of course, lost Fleury, and they lost Ryan Reeves. Really, that's all they lost. They still got a good team there. They got good goaltending. So I think that they're going to finish top of the division. Edmonton, little bit different. They lost Ethan Bear, Jujhar Khaira. Neil's on waivers, so he won't be back. Larson to the Kraken. Signed a couple of big names long-term in Nuge and Nurse. So I'm thinking they're going to be pretty good. They got Cody Ceci, Tyson Berry, Zach Hyman, and Derek Ryan. So I think they're going to still be pretty competitive and finish second. And then just finishing out the division, I got the Canucks in fourth, Seattle fifth. I think Seattle's actually going to not be too bad this season. LA sixth, San Jose seventh, and Anaheim eighth. So that's what I got in the Pacific Division. What are you guys thinking about the Pacific Division? Max, we'll start with you.
I think just the moving and shaking in the Pacific specifically, it's been a weird off season. I again, going back to your Calgary Flames, Jason, it's funny they must have really liked picking apart the Nashville Predators' depth, picking up Richardson and Gudbranson this week. That was just a couple of interesting moves that were finishing last season in gold, but. Man, oh man, it's just such like I said, I go to it and all I can think of is, I mean, there were some moves made, but nothing of seismic change other than really adding the Seattle Kraken to the division. There's still obviously some huge question marks in Vancouver with a couple of key RFAs unsigned and Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes. And I mean, to me, that would be the X factor in terms of the division right there. San Jose, I think they're in for another tough ride. Los Angeles building some really good momentum with a solid stable of prospects. And again, remains to be seen if they're still in on Jack Eichel. And nobody seems to be in on Jack Eichel right now. Including the Buffalo Sabres, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm really hoping that maybe somebody in the Pacific really puts the bag together that they need to go out and get him and make that seismic change in the division transition that we've been waiting for. Overall, as far as off seasons are concerned, again, obviously it's hard not to look at the Seattle Kraken as being pretty big winners. We saw the expansion draft take place. We've all had some time to marinate on it now, and I really kind of like their offseason. I think they maybe overpaid a little bit for Philip Grubauer personally in net, but that's what you need to pay to have a 1A goaltender. I think he was sheltered a little bit having as good a team as he had in front of him in Colorado. But with that being said, though, if you're starting off a new flashy franchise, you got to have some star-studdedness in between the pipes, as we saw with the Vegas Golden Knights, and I think they got two very good goaltenders in Grubauer and Drieger. But man, oh man, I like the Jaden Schwartz pickup. I like some of the moves that they elected to make at the expansion draft. And then a few other notables. Obviously, Mark Giordano going to set the culture and set the tone for them right out of the stables. And I agree with you, Jason. I think they're going to be a decent team. And as far as the rest of the Pacific goes, yeah, it's safe to say it's probably not the strongest division in all of hockey, but for a Flames fan like yourself, that may be a good thing. So not a ton of thoughts on the Pacific other than let's see how it all shakes out.
Yeah. I mostly echo most of the things you guys said. A lot of the stuff that you said about the Golden Knights, exactly. Like they didn't change a ton, but what they did change is they added Evgeny Dadonov, who is a 30-goal scorer potentially. He hasn't really done that in the last little bit, but maybe he finds a little kind of a third line niche on that team and kind of adds that secondary scoring that they really need. But Vegas is just so strong all the way throughout their lineup. On any given night, they could beat you 5-0 or 1-0. Like they've got very strong defensive system. So I still don't see them getting dethroned. I think Edmonton has a chance to be a really prolific team in terms of a lot of offense. We saw it last year with those guys getting hundreds of points in such a short season. Tyson Barrie led all defensemen, and he's still there. They kept him. So I still think, and Duncan Keith coming in. Let's not forget about Duncan. Who knows what kind of role they use him in? It could be a sheltered offensive role, or maybe he's more of a shutdown type of guy. We'll have to see how they decide to use him. So that'll be interesting. But I still think Edmonton's probably good enough to finish at least second. The one that I'm going to disagree with you guys with, and I think that Kings have a really good chance to finish in a playoff spot this year. Max is shaking his head. Getting Victor Arvidsson from Max's Nashville Predators, Quentin Byfield's coming up, and they've made some additions as well throughout their lineup, kind of sprinkling in a few guys here and there. I think they've bolstered their lineup, and their young guys are ready to make a step. And I think their defense is underrated. Cal Patterson is coming up, and he's going to be a pretty solid goaltender for them. He has been already. So I think the Kings in this division specifically, in only this division, have a chance to really be a surprise team that makes the playoffs. And I think people might be sleeping on Vancouver a little bit. So if I were to go 3-4, I think the Canucks might finish 3, depending on how this RFA situation figures itself out. Because really that's the turning point. If they can keep Pedersen and Hughes and keep those guys happy, I think they have a chance to be really good. If something happens there and they slow up the team, or they have to trade a Brock Besser or somebody like that in order to fit those guys on the team, that's going to shift that entire franchise. So if they can keep everybody together, I think the Canucks can definitely have a chance at third. And then it's going to be the Kings and Flames battling it out. And then I think the Kraken, like you guys said, will also be right in that conversation for that fourth spot in that division. And then I think the Sharks and the Ducks, they're going to be fighting for the first overall pick, I think.
Yeah. I think in this Pacific division, I think more than any other division, it's going to come down to goaltending. Edmonton, can Mike Smith play like he played last season? Vegas, they got a hell of a goaltender. He can play like he played last season. They'll be good.
Yeah.
Calgary is going to rely heavily on Markstrom. Vancouver, Demko. So it's definitely going to rely a lot on goaltending, I think.
From what I've heard too, don't overlook Daniel Vladar, who they got from Boston in Calgary specifically. I was talking to my good buddy Joel Henderson. He's been on our show a few times. Awesome scout. He follows the Flames quite heavily. He actually got in touch with some people in the organization, and they are very excited that they were able to pry Vladar out of Boston. They like what he's got, and they like his kind of fit behind Markstrom. So that's a guy that I think Flames fans might like over time. I don't think he's proven himself yet, but from what I've heard, they really like him there. So that could be a guy that maybe he sneaks up for those Flame fans who always like backup goalie better than the starting goalie. You know what I'm saying?
Once Sutter rides Markstrom into the ground, they're going to have to rely on somebody.
Yeah.
Max, why don't we go to you for the Central Division? Give us your thoughts on movers and shakers there, and what your predictions are for this season in the Central.
Oh, wow. I've got a lot of them. I tell you what, maybe the biggest move might be the Arizona Coyotes fully going back to the Kachina logo that I know we all love. But outside of that, that's an acquisition as a Nashville Predators fan I'm very happy with, just in terms of where they're projecting to finish. It's always good to have a team that maybe isn't quite as strong in there to be, when you're on the fringe, you might need those few extra points from a team that doesn't project to be fantastic. But at the end of the day, this was a division with, you look at the moves made around it, Chicago picking up the Vezina winner and Marc-Andre Fleury. I think that's one of those teetering moves that if you look at where Chicago's at in their organizational cycle, you got to hope that Jonathan Toews is healthy again and maybe take one last crack at a cup here. There's some moves that they made, obviously picking up Seth Jones. This is a team that's saying, no, we're going to go for it. We're going to go down with the ship here. And I mean, with that being said, and we won't get too much into the negativeness of what the Chicago Blackhawks have been going through this offseason, but at least on the ice, they seem to be making the right moves. And that's a team that I've got my eye on for sure. And after the Predators had their way with them last year, I don't think it's going to quite repeat itself. Chicago's got a pretty good hockey team, and I like the pieces that they picked up for the acquisition cost rather. I mean, you just look top through bottom. Colorado, I think they are clearly the class of the division. Probably, I wouldn't say the most underrated move, but I think maybe the most valuable move in the offseason was going out and picking up Darcy Kemper from the aforementioned Arizona Coyotes. This is a goaltender I've got at least making the Team Canada Olympic roster as the third goaltender. I think this is a guy who's highly underrated, and clearly Colorado thinks a lot of him after they absolutely shelled him in the bubble last season and still went out and paid a decent little price in Connor Timmins, and I believe an upper end pick in the draft to go out and get him. So Darcy Kemper, I think, can be just as good, if not better, in between Colorado's pipes than Philip Grubauer for about $1.5 million less. And we know that with Colorado obviously having to lock up Cale Makar this offseason, they've got a contract negotiation coming with Nathan McKinnon in the near-ish future. They've got a very young team, and this is the time for them to really kind of explode and get past the second round. I think everybody remembers the comments that McKinnon made after that second round loss to Vegas is he's been around for 7 years and they haven't won bleep for kid-friendly programming. So, I mean, you know, Colorado's going to be hungry to come out and avenge that loss. And I really like what they did this offseason. They didn't have to do much. They've already got a pretty stable of strong ponies over there. But man, oh man, I really like the Darcy Kemper pickup. And moving a little further down the division, I think Dallas was a team that might have been victimized by a little too much last year. Obviously, starting the year with COVID, they had a myriad of injuries, much like the Predators, that they just couldn't quite overcome. They didn't quite have the strength in net. And then you go out and you lock up your franchise linchpin in Miro Heiskanen. And I think Dallas is a team that could surprise a lot of people if they are back to full strength, rocking Jamie Benn. Not Jordy. We'll talk about Jordy a little later when it comes to acquisitions, but no, with
well, and just to add to that, Max, really quick, like Tyler Seguin was hurt all year last year. He played 3 games, and he's coming back for Dallas. And they go out and get the bought out Ryan Suter as well. So like they brought in a few. I'm counting Tyler Seguin as an acquisition for Dallas too. Like they brought in a few guys that should solidify that team and get them back to the levels they were at when they made that cup run. Personally,
yep, 100%.
yeah. No, sorry, keep going, Max.
I mean, I had it there, but that's thanks, buddy.
Were you gonna say it? Because
I might have caught Dallas a good amount last year, but no, Alexander Radulov coming back to full strength too. Like you just look at the names on this roster and where they could be if they were fully healthy. I really like Dallas as a potential playoff team, maybe grabbing that third spot in the division. But then you look a little further down the way in Minnesota, like Clark mentioned, Ryan Suter and Zach Parise being the big news early in the offseason with the surprise buyouts. Dallas snapping him up, and within the division is there going to be some fun revenge games for a still very capable Ryan Suter going against his old squad. And I think the biggest X factor for the Minnesota Wild, we saw them maybe at least by preseason predictions last year overachieve. But man, oh man, Kirill the Thrill, they got to get him locked up. Otherwise, this team, that to them or that too, I guess everybody is the difference between them being that third place or fourth, that first wild card spot team, and not being in the conversation whatsoever. So, I mean, as far as Minnesota is concerned, they really got to get Kirill locked up. They brought back Kevin Fiala on a $5.1 million deal for a season. And yeah, it's again, a team that at least has intrigue, and we'll see where they go, but got to get Kirill locked up. St. Louis is a team that'll always compete, right? I mean, obviously the Tarasenko drama has kind of really been the big storm over this offseason. They fully expect, or at least I saw an article today saying that Berube fully expects Tarasenko to be there. We'll see how long that lasts, and there is a little bit of offseason left to see if that fractured relationship really was completely severed and if they'll bring him back into camp. But if they do, they expect him to be there and be as talented as he's been in the past, scoring 40 goals once in this league before. He could easily do it again. The Winnipeg Jets, obviously their back end was in dire need of some reinforcements. They go out and pick up a couple of key pieces in their offseason. And I don't want to give them too much credit because going back a couple of years when it was the old Central Division, man, oh man, did Nashville and Winnipeg have some rivalries there for a couple of playoff bouts. So when it comes to the Jets, I really like what they've done. I don't necessarily think, and I'm going to maybe anger some Winnipeg fans here, I don't know if they got the right end of the Pierre-Luc Dubois deal. We're going to really see if he can be the guy that they projected to be. Getting rid of Roslovic, who looks to be the premier player in that trade, who nobody would have thought. Patrick Laine, we'll see what happens in Columbus with him, but I don't know. I'm not hedging a bet on PLD in fantasy drafts this year, or really what he's going to bring to the table in Winnipeg. We'll see if he proves me wrong. That could be a take that bites me in 3 or 4 months, but hey, it's the preseason. Let's throw a few out there. So, and then finishing with my Nashville Predators, man, it was the team to talk about. I mean, they were as consistent as they came in terms of returning the organization year after year after year. Clark alluded to it earlier with the Victor Arvidsson deal going into LA in advance of the expansion draft. Ryan Ellis going to Philadelphia. Man, oh man, that looks weird. I saw a picture of him and I don't even know who it was. Might as well have been Carson Twarynski in Philadelphia, but standing side by side. I mean, the beard fits with the colors, but not much else does there. It's very, very weird to see. And you look at Pekka Rinne, obviously retiring, franchise linchpin for so many years, and turning the reins over to UC Saros fully, and then obviously picking up your old boy, Jason Riddick. I guess both of your old boys here. We're going to see if he can become Big Save Dave once again for 15 games this year. So, no, I'm very encouraged with the moves. Cody Glass, obviously coming over from the Vegas Golden Knights. Nolan Patrick, for the 14 seconds we had him, he was a great Predator, provided some nice long-term memories. And yeah, no, it's going to be a very interesting team to watch this year. I'm going to be cautiously optimistic, and Clark knows this because I said it as soon as these trades were made. The Nashville Predators are going to embody competitive-ish as their slogan for probably this next season. But I really like kind of where they're trending. They decided, okay, our core is a little stagnant. It's time to move on from some of these pieces that maybe had been here just a little too long, got a little too comfy. Let's see what can happen with at least the returning members of the core. See if we can get a rejuvenation out of our big money guys and Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson. If Philip Forsberg in a contract year, he's going to be motivated more than ever. Especially not to be traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs at the deadline. So this is going to be one of those situations where Nashville is going to be an interesting team. UC Saros, arguably the best goaltender in the league from March onward last year, outside of Andrei Vasilevsky. I won't be too biased with that statement, but no, it's again, I'm very, very encouraged by the youth movement that's taken place in Nashville. And that's the thing that a lot of people forget with the Predators last year is they were as banged up as anybody. I had mentioned Dallas and the injuries they went through, but Nashville went through a pretty, I guess, tumultuous time when it comes to injuries to key members of the team, and the young group really stepped up. Guys like Tanner Jeannot, who we just had on our show a couple of weeks ago, he came out and was a very, very good presence, former Moose Jaw Warrior. Guys like Matt Olivier, Philip Tomasino, who made a very, very good impact on the Canadian World Junior team this past year. He's looking for a roster spot as well. It's going to be a very interesting team to watch. And then coming down the pipe, you got Yaroslav Askarov in a couple of seasons. But I think UC Saros, he's going to be the X factor for this team, very much like he was last year when they had only just a 0.5% chance of making the playoffs. So I could talk about my boys all night. I'm cautiously optimistic that maybe they could make some noise this year in the type of division that they're in. But yeah, this Central Division, if I'm going to go with some predictions, it's got to be Colorado in the 1 slot, followed closely when I'm looking at the teams, like I said, the logos only tell so much of a story. But number 2, I really think the Chicago Blackhawks are going to have a season. Marc-Andre Fleury is going to be motivated. He's going to win them a lot of games. Jonathan Toews being healthy is the big caveat with that prediction. And then number 3, I don't know, man, it's hard to count out those Winnipeg Jets. I kind of really like what they've done this year. You've obviously got a Vezina winner in net. If he can even return to anything close to that form, in addition to their forwards doing what they're capable of doing, that short up blue line, they're going to be a team to watch out for as well. I mean, if you look at the Central as compared to the Pacific, it could very well be a 5-team playoff division, snapping up both of the wild card spots available. So I would say Dallas, St. Louis, or Minnesota, take your pick, maybe get in there. Again, I'm going to be happy to be wrong if the Nashville Predators can find a way into that final wild card spot. But it's going to be a competitive division. The only one I'm going to fully count out would be the Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Where do I go? That was awesome, Max. I think the Jets, for me, I think they are still good enough to be second. And you mentioned, the Dubois thing, but overall, I think their top 12 in terms of their forward group is extremely strong, top to bottom. And they still have some younger guys on the bottom end. They did lose Mason Appleton, but they have some younger guys that are going to be stepping into that lineup. And I think that 1 through 12 forward group, I still really like. They have size, they have speed, they have skill, they have a great mix in that 12, and I just really like what they have. And then the hard part about that 12 is that some of them weren't all that great defensively, and with a lack of a blue line last year, that got exposed a few times, especially in that Canadian division that was kind of all over the place. But they bring in Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon, like Max alluded to, and they have Connor Hellebuck, and I think that's just going to stabilize the defensive play of that team and allow the forwards to maybe be a little bit more of themselves. And I think that's going to allow Winnipeg for me, I think that's going to allow them to finish really well in this division. The rest of the division, Max said it, like from 2 all the way to 6, I think it could go a bunch of different ways. I really like what Dallas has done. And by that, I mean they haven't done a ton, but they've gotten a little healthier, and they've brought in a Ryan Suter to kind of anchor that blue line. And then again, their goaltending situation is interesting too. Jason, you mentioned it with the Pacific with goaltending, but they have Anton Hudobin there. They still have Jake Ottinger, who's supposed to be the next one there. And Ben Bishop is kind of a guy who's just kind of hovering over the team right now. What's he going to do? Is he going to play? Is he going to just sit in LTIR and allow them to do some extra stuff with some cap space? Who knows? I overall, Max said it, I like what Chicago has done, and I think they're going to finish in a playoff spot. And I think the Central, if they do as well as they should get 5 spots in the playoffs in the West, because between St. Louis and Minnesota, and some of those other teams, I just think that they're stronger overall than some of those Western teams in the Pacific, I should say. But I don't love Minnesota. I haven't loved them in a while. I think they're kind of just a weird team altogether. And without Kaprizov, I know they have them, but without them, they're not much. There's not much there. It's kind of, we heard this from Max. We heard this. Who was it? It was a scout that we were talking to one time, or it was on the Rod Peterson show maybe. But he said Minnesota's a bunch of nobodies really outside of Kaprizov, and then Kaprizov comes along and really just makes that offense dynamic finally. But I still think St. Louis might have a bounce back year and finish ahead of those guys. That's my bold prediction for the year, is that with adding Brandon Saad and Pavel Buchnevich, I think that's going to kind of just change the vibe of the team a little bit. And we'll see, maybe Binnington has a bit of a bounce back because he was a little up and down last year. But overall, I think 5 spots come out of the Central Division. I think it's a really deep division. I'm not going to say it's super top heavy, but I think it's very deep from, I'm going to say 2 to about 7. I don't think Arizona has a chance. So they're obviously 8. And then everybody else, though, they have a chance to do something this year. Even Nashville, Max. I think, like you said, they're going to be a little scrappy. Nashville's going to be scrappy. So I don't think that I'm not counting them out at all. So we'll see. But it's going to be an interesting division to see how it kind of just, falls together.
Yeah, I can't wait till Nashville raises that banner that says competitive-ish.
Yes.
I'll design it for
banner.
Yeah. So real quick, I'll go through my picks for the Central 1 through 3. We're pretty much on the same page, all of us. I got Colorado number 1, Winnipeg 2, and Chicago 3. I got Minnesota in 4th. If Kaprizov plays, that was in my mind as well before Clark, you said it, and Max, he's a big factor. I got Nashville finishing 5th.
I think it, Jason. I like it.
I think you're right, Clark. I think there's going to be 5 out of the Central, and Nashville will be one of them, I believe. Bottom 3, I got Arizona, Dallas, and St. Louis finishing last.
St. Louis last. Ooh.
Yeah, I think Binnington's done. I think, I don't know. I don't think they're going to pull much off this season.
Andrew Ladd's going to come out of nowhere and have an 80-point season for the Coyotes this year. Is that what you're saying, Jason? Andrew Ladd?
Louis Eriksson on the opposite wing. It's going to be dangerous.
Yeah.
And Jay Beagle up the middle.
Jay Beagle.
Let's go. I'm excited.
All right, we'll go to Clark now for his division. His Leafs are in the Atlantic Division.
Sorry, can I go pop some popcorn real quick, Jason? I feel like we're going to be here in a minute.
You just went on a 20-minute rant about the Nashville Predators, Max.
Sir, we've only been live for 27, so it was actually like 12 and a half.
Right. I won't be too long. So the Atlantic, to me, it begins and ends with Tampa Bay. There's not much to be said. Those guys are back-to-back Stanley Cup champs. They did lose some guys, but they're a factory there. They're just going to replace them with younger guys who are just the same. So they lost Gord, of course. They lost Tyler Johnson to Chicago, which we didn't mention earlier, but Tyler Johnson's in Chicago, so that's going to look weird. But overall, they have a couple of younger guys that are already coming up and filling those spots. So I think Tampa Bay is going to be just fine. It might take them a while to get going. We saw it with Washington after their Stanley Cup, and I know they didn't win back-to-backs, but we saw it with them where, that next year, it maybe took them a while to get going. Now Tampa's had 2 really deep playoff runs, so it might take them a minute to get going. But once they kind of settle together and get back into their groove, I don't see them losing a whole lot of games. But after that, it's going to be really interesting, and I think 2 to 4 in this division could go a lot of different ways, but I think it's going to be between 3 teams. I think it's going to be Florida, Boston, and Toronto. I have it in that order currently, but again, Toronto is one of those teams. They could finish second. They could finish first. Boston's one of those teams. They could finish second. They could finish first. Florida, they made a bunch of changes, made a bunch of additions. Sam Reinhart, Sam Bennett, among others. And I think that they have a great blue line. They had to trade away guys out of their blue line because they have so many good ones. And Aaron Ekblad's coming back from injury, hopefully, before too long for them. He's a big piece of that team. So I think Florida's strong enough that they could be one of those teams that just keep winning games and nobody can really beat. And Sergei Bobrovsky, we know it. He has a bad year and then a good year. He just had a bad year, so watch for Sergei Bobrovsky to win a Vezina. That'll probably happen. So anyways, I think top 4, I think that the East is going to be split 4-4 because there's a lot of good teams in the East, but I think it'll be split 4-4 in terms of playoff spots. I think it'll be Tampa, Florida, Boston, and then Toronto will come up in the rear in 4th. I do like, obviously, some of the moves Toronto made, but losing Zach Hyman is going to be hard to replace. And the goaltending is going to be a question mark until it settles itself out. So once it does, and if it does, I think they could be really good, quite solid. And then it's just there's too many question marks with their left wing at the moment that I don't know the answers to, but just until camp hits and we start to see where guys are going to line up. Nick Ritchie coming in. Michael Bunting is a big question mark. Is Kerfoot going to be a winger for Toronto? There's a lot of question marks with where everybody's going to fit right now. Is Nick Robertson finally going to crack the roster? That super prospect of theirs that they have. And I say super because he's the only one they got, Max. So don't bash me for that.
No, I get it. You're hyping him up for the Philip Forsberg trade that you really desperately want. I got it.
Yeah.
Continue.
Straight up for Philip Forsberg.
Oh, straight up. Whoa, that wasn't part of the proposal. No.
We'll see. I'll talk to Kyle Dubas after the show here tonight. After that, my prediction that I think some people are starting to kind of come around on is I think Ottawa is going to be a nice team this year. And I'm not going to say they're going to be real good, but we saw it last year. They didn't go away in many games. Sometimes they got blown out, yes. but they didn't go away. They kept scrapping and they kept fighting and they kept grinding. And they have those young guys that are coming along. And me and Max talked about it last episode. They have a guy like Drake Batherson who has some skill, who's now going to be in their top line. They just signed him for a long-term deal. That Brady Tkachuk is a guy every team in the entire league wants on their team. And he'll eventually be back. I'm sure of it. They'll sign him and get him locked up. But everybody else on that roster just kind of has their role and they play it really well. And they've gelled quite good over the last couple of years. So I feel like Ottawa could be a team that finishes in 5th. Montreal
they're thanking God that they played Calgary 10 times, probably.
Yes. I think they're also happy they won't have to see Edmonton next year, because that was the team they always got blown out by. But I think Montreal, with Shea Weber being out, with Carey Price's health, he's probably going to play most of the season, but we'll see how that goes. And losing Philip Deneau from Montreal to LA, by the way, I forgot to mention that earlier. But losing him, losing Kotkaniemi the way that it happened, not necessarily that he's a player that's going to sink the franchise, but the way that it happened was definitely, shake up worthy. Bringing in Christian Dvorak's interesting for Montreal, but overall, I think losing a guy like Shea Weber on the blue line, I don't think there's a whole lot of replacements for what he did for them in terms of a power play quarterback and a workhorse. I don't know how many guys on that blue line currently can fill that fully. Even though he was getting older, he was still Shea Weber. So I think it's going to be, I think Ottawa can finish ahead, Montreal, and then Buffalo and the Red Wings will round out the bottom, probably with Buffalo right at the bottom. I think Detroit is going to maybe take a small step forward from what they've been the last couple of years, but not much. It'll be a small step. But other than that, so that's how I think the Atlantic's going to shake down. And I just did a 6-7 minute breakdown. So Max, I beat you.
So
good work for the first time ever.
Before we go to Max, real quick, Clark, Tampa going to three-peat?
I mean, if any team could have done it in the last while, I think it could be Tampa. Really, they still have Braden Point. They still have Stamkos. Kucherov's going to play all year long unless he gets hurt again somehow. Victor Hedman's getting back to health. I mean, they still have pretty much their entire roster. With Pittsburgh, when they went back to back, they lost a bunch of guys year after year. Tampa hasn't lost a ton of guys. They did lose their third line. Like I said, Yanni Gourde and Tyler Johnson. Those are good players. But they have young guys, whereas Pittsburgh didn't have young guys. That was the biggest difference. Pittsburgh didn't have the next wave coming up. Tampa just always has waves. And shout out to Al Murray from Regina here. He's their assistant general manager, head scout. That guy has put together a roster that just continuously replenishes itself, just like the New England Patriots for years in the NFL, and so many, like the Calgary Stampeders. I see your jersey on the wall, Jason. They just, guys leave, but another guy comes in and fills the spot just fine, and that's Tampa. So I'm going to say they have a much better chance than Pittsburgh did a few years ago to do it, and they would be the team to do it. But there are some good teams around the league, and that's going to be a tough battle, especially after 2 long playoff runs.
I echo your sentiments, my friend. I don't know. I think this is, to me, this is one of the.
You're up. Let's try and keep it under 15 minutes.
Oh, I can do that. Don't worry. This one will be a lot quicker, I promise you. But no, when it comes to the Atlantic, I look at it. I mean, this is the most interesting division in hockey for me this year, because the 3 Canadian teams are going to get a wake-up call from the 3 teams that have traditionally dominated this division. When I say traditionally dominated, I mean Florida's not quite in there. Boston is still going to be a very, very good team, re-upping with Taylor Hall. Re-solidifying the goaltending, even though Tuukka Rask is maybe not quite what he once was, picking up Linus Ullmark. I thought that was a really nice addition. And then you still got Jeremy Swayman there as well, too. Like, they've got options in net. I agree with you wholeheartedly, Clark, on Tampa Bay. If there's going to be any team to do it, it would be these guys, Ross Colton, Matthew Joseph. They're just waiting, chomping at the bit to get into more games. And
Alex Barry-Boulet is another one. They have Boris Kachuk, who's just sitting in the minors. They have Taylor Radish, who's just sitting in the minors. Like, they have guys after guys. And Tampa too, Max, to build on what you're saying, is another team that, there's still a lot of good vets out there. Guys are going to sign there for league min just because of what they've done. And I see guys like a Jason Demers, for example, is still a free agent. Why wouldn't he sign a free agent league minimum deal to just go to Tampa and solidify that blue line even more than it already is? Like there's guys like that around the league that will just go to Tampa because it's Tampa and it's great to live there. It's no taxes. Why wouldn't you? But another thing, Max, just to build on you, and then I'll let you keep going. David Krejci for the Boston Bruins is going to be a big loss for those guys. I think he was under celebrated by Bruins fans, and I think that's going to be a big hole for them. But we'll see how they fill it. I mean, they have Charlie Coyle, they have a few other guys that they brought in, but so we'll see. Anyway, sorry, Max.
Yeah, Eric Holla coming at you, former Predators. Tell you what, as soon as you leave Nashville, you're due for a career year. That's the way she rolls. But no, it's an interesting division. I think you look at Ottawa too as the X factor. I'm going to go against your take a little bit, my friend. It's again, this division, this is not the Canadian division anymore. There's some good goaltenders in this division. I've got a personal note of Drake Batherson. I don't think he's getting over 50 points for signing a $5 million deal. Clark knows exactly why that's funny. But, it's like I said, it's a very interesting division to watch for me. I think it's still the powers that we all know that we all kind of look to, and Florida is going to emerge as the next one. I got them finishing second in the division. Like Clark said, Sergei Bobrovsky, if there's 3 guarantees in life, it's death, taxes, and Sergei Bobrovsky bouncing back after a bad season. So, I mean, you look at them, Toronto, Clark, I like your team. I think they're going to finish in for sure, but that Hyman loss is going to be one to replace. And I really look forward to seeing Robertson actually crack that lineup and do some damage, as well as your boy, Adam Brooks. I think he could be that really nice fill in, that 12th, 13th forward, see what happens with the Ilya Mikheyev situation after the drama that occurred there. Very interesting division, and that's the only way I can sum it up from there for the Atlantic for me.
Yeah, with Toronto too, just on Zach Hyman. Now I'm going to go on my 15-minute rant. Here we go.
Perfect.
So with Zach Hyman, what they were able to do with that $5.5 million that Edmonton gave Zach Hyman was they went out and they gave it to Nick Ritchie, Michael Bunting, Andre Kasha. So they filled it by committee. So that's where I said earlier, there's a lot of those kind of just, we're not sure what it's going to be until we see, is Nick Ritchie a third liner, or did they sign him to put him on the first line with Austin Matthews? Or is, is Michael Bunting a fourth liner, or did they sign him to put him in the top 6 and try to make him the Zach Hyman replacement? Is Andre Kasha going to be healthy? That's why with Toronto, I'm kind of in wait and see mode. That's why I put him in 4th for now, just because with Boston, there's more certainties. With Florida, I think they added some bigger pieces like Sam Reinhart, as I mentioned, and a couple other guys. And they were already on the rise. That's why I agree with Max. I think Toronto's going to be there eventually. I'm just kind of in wait and see mode because they could be great. It might not work out as well as they are hoping. And we're just going to have to see how it goes.
How did you miss your boy, Peter Mrazek? That might have been the offseason acquisition.
I talked about that in the first part when I started. I said they're two.
No, you said the goaltending was.
Okay. We're not sure what it's going to be.
I'm just checking you. We're in preseason mode. I'm holding you accountable. That's all.
Yeah. We're not sure what that goaltending tandem is going to be, Peter. If you want me to talk about it, I will. I was trying to.
I like the pickup. That's what I think is in terms of additions with Toronto. I really like that pickup. I think he was sneaky your best for sure.
He's been a tandem goalie his whole career. He's been a good one. He's had some really good numbers when he's done. Played 40 some. Maybe 50 games. And Jack Campbell's coming off a solid year. So like I said in my first thing, I didn't name their names, but
exactly. Well, you got to name them.
Okay. If their goalies are strong, that's where I see them maybe being able to finish in that second spot, because it has the potential to have the best goalie production that they've had in a couple of years at least. I know Freddie Anderson was a hero for a few years, but even before that, let's look before that too. It could be the best goalie duo that they've had in a long, long time. So if that's the case, then maybe I can see them going a little higher. But it could also maybe not work out as well as we want. So I'm hesitantly putting Toronto in 4th, and I'm hoping for the best.
All right. That's some great insight. And yeah, you're in preseason form, but you got to get into game shape there, Clark.
Yes, I need to do more podcasts. Oh, by the way, Jason, I'm wearing your hoodie today.
Nice.
Hoodie on today. Yeah.
You always happen to wear it on the day that you're on my show. That's crazy.
Weird. Yeah. Weird.
All right, my picks for the Atlantic, of course, Tampa on top. Like you said, they didn't lose much. Johnson, really, in my mind, is all they lost. As long as Vasilevsky can stay healthy, I think they're good. But if something happens to him, they could be in trouble. I got Boston in second. Crazy,
Oh, yeah.
I know.
Could be. It could be. Like I said, from 2 to 4, I could see any of those teams going anywhere. Florida could miss the playoffs, or they could be absolute dynamite. It's hard to say. Like, it's a weird division,
Boston
like Max
lost. They may have lost Rask and Krejci, but I mean, Hall was insane last year playing in Boston. So if he can keep that up, I think they're going to be pretty solid. I got Toronto in third. I think Toronto is going to be a force again this season, even though it's no Canadian division, but I think they'll still be pretty solid. They got the offense for sure. And if Jack Campbell can play like he played last season, they'll be all right. And not a bad backup, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A former number one guy who's your backup now, and it can't be too bad. I got Florida finishing fourth. They could easily swap spots with Toronto, though. I mean, Sam Bennett was crazy last year after he left Calgary. Bobrovsky's always good. So if he can stay healthy, I can see Florida doing really good things, especially if Ekblad plays, because what happened to him last season was crazy. It's just scary stuff. I got Montreal finishing fifth. Carey Price is always a question mark in my mind. He's a goalie that's either really good or really bad. So
not wrong.
Yeah. So that's the big question mark there. And if he's healthy, who knows how healthy he is, right? So and then rounding out the three, I got Ottawa sixth. Seventh, I got Buffalo, and eighth, Detroit. I just don't see Detroit doing much. They're just
that's fair.
I don't know. So I'm gonna quickly run through my Metro picks because I don't follow the Metro really closely, so I don't really know what's going on a lot there. All I know is that's where Ovi is. Ovi and Sid, that's where they are. I got the Caps finishing on top of the division. Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, they're just unstoppable pretty much. Big question mark there is obviously going to be goaltending, just like almost everywhere else is the question mark. I got Carolina finishing second. I like the moves that they've made, especially the mind games with Montreal. That's the best thing I've seen in a long time. Pittsburgh, I got Pittsburgh in third. They're a team that's kind of on the fence to me. They can be really good. They don't seem to be playing as well as they really should be on paper to me. I mean, you got Crosby, who's now the second best player in the world, I guess. Or is he anymore? Who knows? I didn't really hear his name a whole lot last season, so you don't really hear Crosby's name a whole lot anymore. So
yeah.
Goaltending, they still got Jari, right? I believe Tristan Jari. Yeah. So I got the Islanders finishing fourth. I would have put the Islanders higher, except they lost Eberle. He's not a huge loss, but I mean, he was still pretty active on the offense. So I got them in fourth. Fifth, I got Philly. I don't even know who plays on Philly anymore. Philly's a team that I've never really kind of followed or hear much about for some reason, and I don't know why that is. But I wrote my picks down crazy because I have the Islanders in sixth again. Who am I missing? I got the Rangers in seventh and Columbus in eighth.
Rangers,
New Jersey Devils.
Jersey. That says New Jersey, not New York in sixth. That's you're right. Seventh, I got the Rangers, and eighth, I got Columbus Blue Jackets. Blue Jackets are a team that I think is in shambles, and it may take a season or two to get things reorganized and shape back up, I think. Max, why don't we go to you for your or Clark, go ahead on the Metro.
No, I was just going to say, Max can go ahead. I was just going to say, I think we have consensus that I think Columbus is probably going to finish last in that division, unless Max comes out of nowhere and puts them up higher. But I think, yeah, they might have lost a little too much in Columbus in the last couple of years. But go ahead, Max.
Yeah, we'll have to see. The scrappy team of the division. I think obviously with the offseason turmoil, the loss of their goaltender. Please help me with the name here, Clark. Matisse.
Kipleniak.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think that could be a potential
third stringer, though.
He was their third string goaltender, but I mean, clearly when you saw the tributes, I mean, you look at Elvis Merzlikins going out and saying he's going to win a Vezina, like it's those galvanizing things. And I mean, in the off season, you can only take so much from things leading up to camp, but I think that could be a real galvanizing thing for that team. He was obviously a well-respected, well-liked guy, at least for the short time he was there. Obviously just a tough loss organizationally, but at the end of the day, I agree with you both. Columbus, that might be the easy lock for me. I'd like to see Patrick Laine have a good year and maybe go into whatever it is, unrestricted or restricted free agency still. I think he might have one more contract of restricted. Just it feels like Patrick Laine has been in this league forever, but really he's only 22, 23, and that's why I'm betting on him to have a bit of a bounce back season. Like I said earlier, Jack Roslovic, he's going to be another guy that's a piece for them. But they're turning things over, right? John Tortorella, the longtime bench boss of the team, he's no longer there. We're going to see a bit of a culture shift there. And Clark, I know you were calling for a 1. I know what that signal means, so feel free.
Well, it was, thank you, Max. It was just on the goaltending thing, just to finish up with Columbus. With them losing Kipleniak like they did, there was a lot of talks that Jonas Korpisalo was going to get traded, and he's their 1A, 1B goaltender with Merzlikins. And with that happening the way that it happened this summer, they might not be able to trade Korpisalo anymore, which means their goaltending, their duo, that could be one of the better goaltending duos in the league,
really could,
depending on how everything breaks down. So, I mean, if there's a dark horse, like super weird pick, like Max said earlier, they locked up Zach Werenski. They went out and got Jakub Voracek from Philadelphia. They made that move, and they're probably going to put him on Patrick Laine's line with Jack Roslovic. That might be their first line. They could be a weirdly okay team, even though we're all counting them out. And I'm still going to put them in 8th, but they could be one of those teams that just has a weird year and finds themselves up in the standings. But with this division, I don't know. Anyways, go ahead, Max. You're back on the clock.
No worries. Yeah, and I guess we'll go maybe from the bottom of the division to the top, and this is where this might be where, again, I don't think it's as bold a prediction anymore as it once was, but I got the New York Islanders finishing first. When you look at the loss of Anders Lee in the back half of the season last year and still what they were able to accomplish in the playoffs, this is a team that's hungry. This is a team that, in terms of culture and identity, they are as strong as any in the league. They play Barry Trotz and Lou Lamoriello hockey. And the team that they built there by re-upping, going out and getting Zach Parise, who might underratedly still have a little gas left in the tank if he can stay healthy, that could be an underrated pickup on a cheap contract. You look at their top 6 forwards, right? You've got Matt Barzal, a burgeoning superstar, re-upping with Kyle Palmieri, Jean-Gabriel Pajot. Again, we could name these forwards 1 through 12, and it's not maybe the most star-studded cast of folks, but man, oh man, can they play hockey, and they play the game the right way. On defense, Ryan Pulak out there leading the charge, and then along with Adam Pelech, who emerged as a very, very good defenseman for this group. And then in net, you've got a very, very good solid tandem with Ilya Sorokin and then Semyon Varlamov. To me, this is as deep a team as they come in one of the deepest divisions in hockey, I might add. So I've got New York finishing first, and I got Washington a close second. I think they're just always, with that star-studded cast of characters they have over there, are always going to compete for the top of the division, or at the very worst second, while Ovi is still doing his thing. It's going to be a very, very good team to watch as always. In third, I don't know. To me, it's a bit of a toss-up here. You've got a couple of teams that are sneaky. Like, you look at the New York Rangers. I mean, what's not to like about what they are achieving, at least in terms of their draft capital? Is this the year Capo Caco finally comes out? Alex Lafreniere is going to actually have a rookie camp, a training camp, all of these things leading up into a proper NHL debut. I honestly look at this as Alex Lafreniere's rookie season. I think he could be the guy that we all knew he could coming out of the World Juniors and out of Rimouski. Again, this is going back to it very much like the Atlantic, and this is my biggest cliche of the year. And again, another very, very interesting division that's top heavy. I look at Pittsburgh as a team where they could sneak into that fourth spot, but they're going to be playing catch up with Malkin and Crosby both on the shelf to start the year. So what happens there? Can Carter Hart be the guy for the Philadelphia Flyers and really kind of live up to that new 3.79 number match in AAV that everybody seems to like to do these days, picking up Ryan Ellis on the back end? I like what Philly's done. Kevin Hayes obviously losing his brother just a couple weeks ago. We all know how much hockey means in that family, and this could be another one of those playing from the heart every single night. And his buddy, Keith Yandel, signing a, $800,000 contract. That might be the best pickup on the blue line in the entire NHL.
One of Philly's biggest weaknesses last year was their power play efficiency, and they just went out and got Keith Yandel to go into that power play and probably be their power play one quarterback, I would think. And that just allows Ivan Provorov to be a defenseman. It allows Ryan Ellis to go in there and do what he does best. It allows Ristolainen to not have a ton of pressure on him coming into Philadelphia because they just got Rasmus Ristolainen too. So I think Yandel being there on a third pair, but just to go out and be the power play one quarterback, that could be sneaky really good.
Absolutely. And then Carolina, just to finish up real quick, I mean, their offseason is a mixed bag. They obviously didn't want to pay Alex Nedeljkovic, which I think was the loss of the offseason. After watching him closely a lot of games last year, I think they really missed by not retaining him for $3 million. But going out and making some noise with this Jesperi Kotkaniemi pickup, we'll see what happens there with them. At the bottom, I've got the New Jersey Devils and the Columbus Blue Jackets to round out the division. But if I'm going to make my picks, it's a real toss-up for me for the playoff spots. I mean, this is I think the Metro and the Atlantic, you got to go 4-4 with just the strength of the teams in the divisions. But if I'm going to pick, it's got to be the New York Islanders, Washington Capitals, Carolina Hurricanes, and I'm going to say Pittsburgh finds a way because you always do with Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. So that's my 4 out of the Metro.
So I got the Islanders 1-2 as well. Again, I think losing Eberle's may be tough, and they also got rid of Nick Leddy, but they also were able to dump Andrew Ladd, and it opened up a lot of flexibility for them. We mentioned Andrew Ladd's going to be a star for Arizona this year, yeah, I think, Jordan Eberle was going to be a third-line right winger anyways for them, and they have Oliver Wahlstrom, who's a first-round pick from a couple years ago, who's going to slide right in. And again, New York is one of those teams, again, they kind of got guys who just keep sliding in. And when you have a fourth line like they do, Matt Martin, Casey Cizikas, and Cal Clutterbuck, best fourth line in the league, if you ask me, for pound, those guys allow the guys above them to do their job, to do their own thing, so they can be the physical force that goes out and, is that energy line that everyone always talks about. Oliver Wahlstrom can go into that third line and be an offensive player and et cetera, up the lineup. They were able to keep Anthony Beauvillier as well. I really like that keep. And like Max said earlier, their tandem, we're talking about tandems a lot today, but with Varlamov and Sorokin, I think they could be, in terms of actual tandems, not top-end goalie, but tandems, they could be the best tandem in the entire league, in my opinion, especially with that defensive team in front of them. They got a lot going on for them there. I have Washington, too, as well. I think it's going to be getting close to the last hurrah for this group with how old they're getting, but I don't think that they're too old that they're bad. I think that they did lose a couple guys, like they lost Brendan Dillon, for example. They traded him to Winnipeg. But I think overall, adding Anthony Mantha is going to be really huge for that team. It's going to be like a youthful rejuvenation almost to that top six. And I think he has a lot to prove there. And overall, I think they're just a really solid team with a really good team identity. And we were able to actually talk to Alan May, who's their color commentator. And he just said this identity, this team, they're so together. And Ovechkin just has this team so on the same page as the captain. I think they have enough still to be top in that, top end of that division. I have Pittsburgh in 3, and again, it's the same conversation, but with that group, that's the core group that's there. I think Tristan Jarry had a rough year last year, and he's getting a really bad reputation. I don't think he's as bad as he is, or as he was last year. I think he's better than that. So I think he'll have a bounce back type of season. And they've made some slight little moves here and there to kind of tweak their roster. Jason Zucker had a terrible year last year also. And I think he's due for a bounce back. There's a few guys who didn't really have great years, and they still made the playoffs. So I think they'll be pretty good. They'll be just fine. I have the Flyers in 4th, and this is the conversation we had earlier with the Keith Yandel pickup. But they did go out and added. Their defense was their biggest problem last year. There was just a mess all around the ice defensively. And they went out and they moved. This is a sneaky move, but they moved Voracek for Cam Atkinson from Columbus. Cam Atkinson's a pure sniper, whereas Voracek was a playmaker. He didn't score a ton of goals. Cam Atkinson has 30-goal potential every year he steps on the ice, even though he's had some health issues and some lineup issues with John Tortorella in Columbus. Who didn't have lineup issues with John Tortorella in Columbus? But I think he'll come to Philadelphia and be able to be more of himself, be a scoring forward. And then they add Ryan Ellis, Rasmus Ristolainen for a ton of, well, Ellis doesn't have size. Ristolainen has size, a ton of size with Ristolainen, and then Keith Yandel to just take care of the power play. They already have Couturier, Giroux. They still have, like Max said, Kevin Hayes. So I still think that Philly is a team that didn't lose much, but they added some really nice pieces to that lineup. I like Philly to finish 4th, which leaves me with the Rangers finishing 5th. And for every reason Max said, the rookies are going to have better years. I feel like they got more physical. They got bigger. Ryan Reeves, they went out and got Sammy Blais from St. Louis. They went out and got Barclay Goodrow from the Lightning. And I think the defense was pretty good already last year. Plus, they have those 2 good young goalies with Shesterkin and Georgiev. So I think they're going to maybe push for that 4th spot. I don't know if it's there yet, but that leaves Carolina for me at 6th. And that's hard for me to say because everybody's been hyping Carolina for years. They've been growing and growing and growing. But they went out and they lost Dougie Hamilton. And Max also said that they lost Alex Nedeljkovic. And they also lost Peter Mrazek. And they brought in Freddie Anderson, sure. They brought in Antti Ranta, sure. But those guys have been extremely injury-riddled for a few years now, both of them. And together, maybe they're great, but they could also both be hurt by this 3rd week of the season. So it's going to be really hard in Carolina for me to justify losing Hamilton and losing a few other guys. And I don't know if adding Kotkaniemi is going to be the piece that gets them over the hump, especially for giving him $6 million this season. I don't know if that's the one that's going to really move the needle a ton for them. He might be really good as a winger for them. So we'll see. And then the problem is in this division, I think the Devils might have had the best offseason, and I still think they're going to finish 7th. I don't know. That team all around, they haven't been extremely productive. They're young guys. Their number 1 overall picks haven't, been super number-wise productive yet. Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, maybe they will this year. But they went out and got Dougie Hamilton, who we just talked about. They went out and added Thomas Tatar. They added a couple other veteran forwards. And they have Jonathan Bernier now with Mackenzie Blackwood. I kind of like a lot of stuff that they did. But, I still think that they're going to finish 7th with Columbus and 8th. So there's my Metro breakdown. Islanders, Capitals, Penguins, Flyers. I think it'll be really interesting, though, with the Rangers in Carolina to see what they do.
Yeah, I actually forgot about Dougie Hamilton leaving Carolina. That's maybe that might bump them down a notch in my picks.
That was the main reason I had them at 6, because he was their power play guy and he really drove their offense. And with him not there, they also lost Jake Bean to Columbus, and he was going to be their next kind of guy. So I don't know who's their power play guy now. And I know it's not the be all end all, but it's pretty important. They have Brett Pesce, they have Jacob Slavin, Brady Shea. So they have a few guys, but I think they took a big hit with losing Dougie Hamilton.
They're also betting big on a much maligned player that, again, as far as headlines go, Tony DeAngelo. Can he just shut up and play hockey? Because if he does, this is a guy that could be an X factor for a team. Maybe he does. Maybe and then picking up Ethan Bear from the Oilers too. I mean, you can't forget that there's still some players there in Carolina, and you look at that forward group. Andrei Svechnikov's only going to get better. Teuvo Teravainen's going to be healthy again this year. Sebastian Aho, the man that inspired the $20 signing bonus, I guess lining up with fellow Finnish countryman Jesperi Kotkaniemi. That's the thing that I really did like about the Kotkaniemi pickup is however much fellow countrymen have to do with something in terms of maybe feeling like home when you're on the road in the hotel room, getting to speak your native language, getting to I guess gel with some very good players. I really like the Kotkaniemi pickup. We all know the $6.1 million price tag isn't what it's going to be for a long-term deal for him, but that's what you got to do in offer sheet season. You got to pay a little bit more to get the player. But I think this could be a year where we see at least a half a point a game production out of Kotkaniemi, and you're going to see a motivated guy as well, not only just for the money and maybe earning some long-term security with a good organization, but again, the fact that he's going to be playing with some guys that he's very familiar with in terms of his homeland. And I think that speaks volumes in being a young player in the best league in the world. I sneaky like Kotkaniemi as a dark horse player this year. If I'm looking at fantasy drafts, I'm picking him as a late round sleeper without a doubt.
Well, yeah, and they have Jordan Stahl, they have Vincent Trocheck, Martin Nakash. Like, they have some guys for sure. It's really hard for me to count them out.
The goaltending, I'm with you though, Clark. The goaltending, without a doubt. That's the big question mark.
It's kind of similar to what I said about Toronto. Like, maybe this tandem's really good together, but there's a percentage chance that it could be really bad. And not necessarily that they're bad goalies, but just health-wise, they're not. Maybe they aren't 100%. And if that's the case, it could all just go out the window. But I'm looking at their daily face-off, which, if you don't know, dailyfaceoff.com, it's a great website for lineups, pairings, etc. They got Ian Cole as well. So their top six defense actually isn't all that bad. It's just going to be who's going to replace what Dougie Hamilton was for that team. He was so huge there, putting up major points and moving the puck and, keeping teams on their ankles. And it's really tough to see who's going to replace him. But their forward group it's pretty deep. So, I mean, they could. I just think that division overall is going to be really strong.
I think they're one of the few teams that adopts a 4-1 first unit power play because they are deep in their top 4 or 5 forwards there. So that's what I see.
All 5
exactly.
forwards.
Yeah, all forwards. Tom Dundon likes offense anyways. You're never going to see him draft a defenseman in the first round. He said it already. So anyways, very interesting division for sure.
Yeah. So there you go.
All right. Yeah. So those are the picks for the division, where the teams are going to finish in the divisions. Before we sign off here and take off for the night, let's have real quick your pick for the Stanley Cup winner this season. Max, who's taking the Stanley Cup this season?
Man, this is where I would like to defer to.
Give me a Stanley Cup winner and a dark horse.
Can I plead the Bob McKenzie and not make a prediction in early September, Jason? You're going to do that to me, hey? I'm going to take the 5th. No, you know what? I mean, this could change very drastically by the time Clark and I do our season previews. Just I've really got to go through a study of all these teams. But at the end of the day, like, I look at it as there's just going to be some incredible hockey played this year. I got to go with the Colorado Avalanche. I have to. I really think that in terms of favorites, like I said, I'm going to stand by my Darcy Kemper being one of the pickups of the offseason. I think that could be the guy that just fills the net for that team. And Nathan McKinnon, he continues to evolve into one of the best leaders in the game, and they take a step forward. So I got to go with the Colorado Avalanche as a favorite. If I'm going to take a dark horse, oh man, Jason, don't do this to me. You know what? I will say it. I am very, very optimistic, and especially if it's a dark horse pick, I really like the logo on my hat. I really like UC Saros, and I know what he's capable of, especially on a team that's not that great in front of him. But with that being said, I also don't want to say that this year because I know that there's some really good pieces that they picked up. Didn't even talk about Philippe Myers being a guy that could be a replacement for Ryan Ellis on the back end, bringing a different dimension. They're younger up front, but they were the most successful last year when they were young. And those young pieces now only have another year of development. So that could be a team that the Nashville Predators are just strong 1 through 12 and 1 through 5/6 on the back end, riding UC Saros. Anything can happen in September anyways when you're making predictions. So I'm going to be positive with my boys tonight. Go Preds, go.
That's fair. That's fair. Matt, Clark, what do you think?
I want to also say Colorado. I picked them last year, so it's hard for me not to pick them again this year because their defensive group is so good. Getting Kemper is a nice move. And their forwards are great, but they did lose Donskoy, who was kind of a, not an X factor, but he was really kind of a key piece to what they had going on. And they lost Brendan Saad too, who was a guy who could play anywhere in that lineup pretty much. So not that those guys are going to kill them in terms of their depth, but I still think they'll be really good. I'm going to go with Vegas. I'd love to say Tampa, but the odds of them three-peating are slim. Like it's so hard to do. I'm going to say Vegas just is a little bit different this year. I still think that they've gotten so deep every single year. And I think that they're not done yet in terms of adding. I don't think that they're just going to be the team that they are currently come playoff time. I think they're gonna make some sort of splash, and what that is, I don't know. But their center depth is questionable, so maybe they go out and make a big splash for some centerman. So we'll see how that goes. I think that they could be the team though this year. Dark horse, and I'm gonna say a couple of teams just to kind of cop out and not.
No. No, you get one. You get one. He said one dark horse.
I'll give you a West and an East, and I'll give you a West. I think it's going to be Chicago. I think Chicago could be I don't know if they're even a dark horse, but they haven't been very good lately. But the one that I'll actually say, I think the Flyers. I think the Flyers could be a dark horse. Again, I love what they did with their blue line. And I think Carter Hart is due for a bounce back. They went out and got Martin Jones as their backup goalie, and I know he hasn't been great, but I think he's going to be a nice stabilizing backup for Carter Hart. And maybe he'll teach him a thing or two about going through tough times, because Martin Jones has had his fair share. But I just like their group again. Overall, their forward group it's got size, it's got physicality. They are able to score. They play defense. Sean Couturier is one of the best shutdown centers in the league. And I just love what they did with their defense. So I'll say Vegas and I'll say the Flyers, but I don't like either pick necessarily. It's tough.
I myself, we're very close, Clark. We're very close. I'm going to say Tampa Bay is going to three-peat. That's my favorite pick. And dark horse, I'm going with Chicago. I think Marc-Andre Fleury is going to be a huge difference. And Patrick Kane is insane year after year. And if Taves is healthy, they're going to be pretty potent. So I'm going with Chicago.
If Taves is back, I'll tell you what, if he's anywhere close to what he was, that team will be interesting.
So, guys, they pick up a Vezina Trophy winner and arguably a top 10 defenseman in the NHL, and we're going to call him a dark horse, eh?
Well, what have they been the last few years? Yes, they're a dark horse. They've been.
That's right. 3 Stanley Cups in the last 10 years. Yeah, that's right.
They went from being a whooping horse last season to a dark horse now.
I like it, boys. Good stuff.
They may be a thoroughbred one day.
They had the 3rd overall pick just a couple of years ago, Max. Of course they're dark horse.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That NHL draft lottery. What a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, guys. As always, great talking to you guys. I love talking hockey, and you two are definitely two of my favorites. So I'm going to have you on a lot more for sure. And we're going to wrap things up here. So thanks for coming on, and we'll chat again real soon.
Thanks a ton, Jason.
Thank you. Thanks, Jason.
Hey, everyone. I'm here to tell you about a new craft distillery in Calgary, Broken Spirits Distillery. These guys are making some amazing craft spirits and cocktails, from spiced sugarcane to different styles of gin. Broken Spirits are proud to be part of the Puck and Pigskin podcast and want to offer you 15% off your purchase, either in-house at the distillery or online at brokenspirits.ca. Punch in offer code BROTHERS15 to claim your discount. Go in for a cocktail and check them out. You won't be disappointed. How's it going, guys?
It's going good. Winning some money tonight.
Oh, hang on one second.
It's a fluke. It's a good game, though.
Jared and Travis Ryan here, two drunk brothers in a podcast. This, of course, is Betting with the Brothers, brought to you by Broken Spirits. Yeah, what a game, hey?
Oh man, I mean, we lost money on it, but it was such a fun game to watch. And we were talking about our we just finished up recording our podcast for the week, and we were watching the Eli and Peyton stream, which was super fun. It was super fun to watch.
I had no idea that was even going on, or else I would have definitely watched that because I heard it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, you have to tune in. We were talking, they're doing like 10 or so. I think they're doing it again this upcoming Monday, which might not be as good of a game, but they give you like a deep dive analysis, which even for a football fan who doesn't know a whole lot, or even for somebody who does know a whole lot, it just gives you like a glimpse into their perspective, which is wild because it really shows you what you don't know about the game of football.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I wish they would do something like that for hockey too. That'd be pretty sweet.
That would be
That
cool.
would be awesome because a lot of people don't know jack shit about hockey.
Well, Fox tried to teach people about hockey with the glowing puck and all that kind of crap.
Yeah, that didn't last very long at all. That didn't last very long at all.
They could.
No.
They just need to do what Nickelodeon did with their game, their football game last year. Just kidding.
All right. So you guys got some a few picks for me this week?
I mean,
We
yeah,
sure do.
absolutely, man.
All right, Travis, let's hit it first with you. What do you got?
We rolling into the picks. How many we given this week? Let's start out with that.
Well, last week we did 3, and then I sprung the Raiders one on Jarrett. So maybe we'll do 3 again and the Raiders one.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I
don't want to give away all your picks because
I want to make sure I give you my best ones that I like. We'll roll in with what we just talked about in our podcast, my lock of the week. So my one that I'm most confident in, one that you're going to put the most amount of units on to get a good return on, is going to be the Cardinals, the Arizona Cardinals this week. They are 4.5-point favorites at home versus the Vikings. Vikings coming off a loss against the Bengals, didn't look good. Cardinals coming off a win versus arguably a very not even Super Bowl favorite, but postseason favorite in the Titans. Big run game. I feel like if they can stop Derrick Henry and the Titans are going to be able to stop Dalvin Cook and the Vikings. 4.5 points at home is nothing for what Kyler Murray looked like in week 1.
Now, before we move on to Jared, I'm looking at I have the Score app here on my phone. So I'm looking at the Vikings and the Cardinals game that's listed here, 2:05 p.m. It says minus 4.5 we're beside the Cardinals. Beside the Vikings, it says T51.0. What does that number represent?
That's the total. So like the total in the game is 51. Yeah. So like both scores combined. So like last night, a lot of people had the over in the Ravens-Raiders game, and they were kind of bummed because it was kind of a slow start. And then at the end, there's just points galore, and the over ended up hitting. So that's what that means, total of 51.
Yeah, I heard about one guy who apparently lost $300,000 on the last second field goal by the Raiders because that put the score over.
Yeah.
Either that put the score over, or going into overtime would have put the score over, like the points scored in overtime. So yeah.
If he didn't lose it on the field goal, he for sure lost it on that game-winning touchdown to Zay Jones. So,
and we had one that a bad beat that kind of burned to us. We had Brian Edwards under 3.5 receptions on the game. Had none going into that last game-tying drive, and it's burnt us. Very bad beat for us. So
yeah, bad. He had 4 catches in like the last 7 completions Derek Carr had. It was insane. It happens though. That's gambling for you.
Yeah,
exactly. No kidding. All right, Jared, let's roll with you. What do you got?
So Travis gave us his lock. I'll give you guys my lock of the week. It is another NFC West team. I got the Rams minus 3.5 going into Indianapolis. And it sounds like somebody had a vacuum going on just now. I think it was Jason. He's shaking his head. It happens, man. My dog barks during my podcast all the time, or our podcast. I got the Rams minus 3.5 at the Colts. 3-unit play on Sunday. It's my lock of the week. Listen, I mean, we watched Carson Wentz got absolutely bullied by the Seattle defense on Sunday. He was sacked 3 times. He fumbled the ball, was hurried on 16% of his dropbacks, 3rd most in week 1. I mean, just imagine what Aaron Donald and that Rams defensive line is going to do to the Colts and that offensive line. Also, the Indy secondary got torched by Lockett and Metcalf. Imagine what's going to happen with, Stafford going to Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Tyler Higbee, Van Jefferson, guys like that. So Rams -3.5, -4, wherever it's at, go ahead and lock it in.
All right, go and lock it in. And Travis, why don't you give me one more here?
All right. My next one I might steal some thunder away from Jarrett because we both had this pick on our podcast, but I'm gonna go for it anyway. It's a college football game, Saturday, after the evening, 5:00 here Central Time. It is East Carolina at Marshall Thundering Herd. We are Marshall, getting 10 points favorite at home. We are both, and I'm speaking for us on both of our behalf, and that's a pick. So when we make our picks, we do so separately. And if we both pick the same one, that we've got some value right there. So we're both taking Marshall -10 so far this year, averaging 46 points a game, only allowing 8 points a game. Meanwhile, East Carolina's 0-2. Granted, they do have losses to Appalachian State and South Carolina, but they have not looked very well in either game, only scoring 17 and 19. I think this Marshall defense is going to smother them and put some points up on the board with their young QB Grant Wells, and steamroll this team in East Carolina at home.
All right, sounds good. I think we may have lost Jarrett. Oh, there we
Here
go.
he is.
I'm back now. Sorry, my computer died. So yeah, Rams -3.5. So I don't know what pick Travis just got, but yeah.
Marshall.
He took a college game. We are Marshall.
Yeah, that was a game that I liked a lot as well. I'll roll into another pick for you guys. It's a little bit of a high value, so it's one I would sprinkle a little bit less money on. But I got Michigan State money line at number 24 Miami. College game, obviously. It's at 11 a.m. on Saturday. Michigan State's a big-time underdog in this one. But I don't think Miami's very good. They got trounced by Alabama. I think that ruined their whole season. They beat Appalachian State by 2 points at home last weekend. And Michigan State's look damn good. Their quarterback averages 10 yards per completion. Their running backs averaging 10.7 yards per carry, which is amazing. I think Michigan State goes on the road and gets this done. Again, their money line's plus 195, very high value, so only put a unit on it, but I like that pick a lot.
And once again, the money line is just betting win or lose, right?
Yes, sir. Yep, just Michigan State to win.
I'm picking this stuff up. I'm picking it up.
Yes, you are.
All right, so Travis, I guess I'm going to hit you with the Raiders game this week. It looks like we got a 5.5 point spread and a total of 47 points.
All right, let me pull it up here. You caught me by surprise. Who are they playing?
They are playing the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oof.
You're not gonna like it again. You're
on
not
the
gonna
road,
like
though?
it again. On the road in
last
Pittsburgh. Listen, last week was a fluke. The Ravens should have won by 10. We all know it. I'm just giving you a hard time. But in all reality, I gotta go with the Steelers -5.5. They are coming off a huge win versus the Bills. They were able to shut Josh Allen down. They looked so sharp on defense. Now, offense is a different story, but shouldn't really pose too much of a problem against the Raiders. I hate to say it. Even though the way Derek Carr and that offense looked might give the defense a little bit more trouble. But I got to go with the Steelers -5.5. Jarrett, can you agree with me?
I can.
Unfortunately.
I actually like what was the over-under in that game, Jason? What was it at?
It is 47.
I actually like the under, I think, in this one. Yeah, I like the under. So Travis gave you the spread there. I don't mind. And to be quite frank, I'm probably not going to put money on this game at all. I don't feel comfortable enough, but since you're a Raiders fan, you have a Raiders following, I'll definitely give you a pick. I don't mind Travis's play at Steelers -5.5. I do like the under of 47, though. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, and the Steelers are going to hold the Raiders to a low amount of points. And like Travis just said, the Steelers' offense took a while to get going on Sunday. That very well could happen again in week 2. So I actually like the under of 47 in that one.
So how do you guys like the parlay then of taking the Steelers 5.5 spread, the under 47, and say the Steelers? That I guess that would mean if you're picking the Steelers against the spread, you're also picking them to win, right?
Yeah, so you can't parlay spread and money line on the same thing, but you can parlay the spread or money line with the over/under.
Yeah, and something we didn't talk about last week.
Oh boy, Jared's going to open up a can of worms. I can hear it.
I am.
I already know it's coming.
They're called teasers. So you can either buy a 6.5 or a 7-point teaser. Now, what a teaser is, so like in this instance, Jason. So if you wanted to bet on the Steelers and the under, you could do what's called a tease and tease 7 points. So that moves the line. So basically, if you wanted to do a 7-point teaser of the Steelers minus 5.5 and the under 47, that would make the Steelers minus 1.5, or sorry, plus 1.5, and the under of 54. So it moves the line, and they both have to hit though for that. Yeah, they both have to hit for that bet to win. So like I did that on the Monday night game. I didn't like the Rams at -8 or wherever we were at the time, so I did a 7-point teaser to do Rams -1. And the under of like 55 or whatever of whatever it made it, and that bet hit.
But you could also do it the other way and add 7 on the Raiders side, so it could be Raiders plus 12.5, and then if you wanted to go over, you could go over 40. So if you're going over, it takes the number down. If you're going under, it takes the number up, and then you can add the points on either side, whichever you take.
That would probably be something I'd be more interested in the Raiders game. I would probably tease it on the Raiders side of things to move to 12.5.
You think the Raiders are threatening? No offense to Jason. I know you're Raiders podcast, but they came off a huge win versus the Ravens. I really, and I'm going to say with 99% certainty that the Steelers are going to win this game. So I would tease it on the Steelers side. So pretty much make them to win and then the under. That's what I would do.
Yeah, fair enough.
So in that game, aside from the first quarter and a half, the Raiders looked pretty good, didn't they? I mean, Carr threw for over 400 yards.
He did.
If we're taking a pick in the game, it's going to be a prop on Darren Waller. And it's going to be over on his receptions or yards because we did it on Monday night, and it's easy money.
He was targeted, 19 times he was targeted, which is insane.
Yeah.
So that might be the rest of the season. Like if we're going to talk Raiders games, might just come on and be like, hey, whatever Darren Waller's over on receptions or yards is, take it because that's like easy money. We did both last night and they both hit. So those are always the player props add a little bit of element to the gambling because they like give you something else to cheer for. Like while even if it's a blowout, you can be like, oh, I need so-and-so to get this many yards or so-and-so to get this many catches. And you're just cheering for them to like get the ball. And it makes it a lot of fun.
And it really adds to, so say we bet on the Steelers, this upcoming week. It adds to the fact that even whenever the Steelers don't have the ball, when the Raiders have the ball, it's like, hey, it's okay if Darren Waller catches the ball and then get first down and score because we have bet on him. Even though we bet on the Steelers, we're still kind of gaining ground on the other side.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. That's the brothers' picks for this week, and we'll see you guys again next week with some more picks, and we'll see what happens this weekend.
Awesome. Thanks for having us, Jason.
Raiders are going to win.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for having us on.
What it is, what it do. Ladies and gentlemen, Joshua Adam William Arbuthnot here for the Raider Report on the Puck and Pigskin podcast. I'm here right now in fabulous Viva Las Vegas. Just got a chance last night to see the Las Vegas Raiders take down the Baltimore Ravens in person. And what a way to start off this Las Vegas Raiders season, folks. Maybe not just the NFL game, so far of the year. Maybe the best sports game of the year. Now, obviously up here, as we're recording Canada, there's going to be some other games. The Canadian women's team comes to mind. But man, we were in for a show, and man, was I happy to be there. Missed the first 5 minutes of the game. If you're an international traveler coming down here, I would say come down a little earlier, because the Americans have vaccination cards and we have those papers for our double vaccinations, and you have to go through a different line for international side. And it's a little bit longer because you have to get a wristband for it, because they don't take the paper in compared to the vaccination card. So a little FYI, that kind of derailed us for a little bit, so I didn't get to see that initial first drive until this morning when I watched back the game and got to see that really cool Mariota play. And that's something I hope that they maybe use going forward overall. First, let's talk about the atmosphere. Just everything you would imagine from Vegas. There's a live band going, there's lights going, sound going. As far as loudness, it got pretty loud. I've been to a handful of NFL stadiums. Definitely louder than Denver. Definitely louder than Mile High, and that's not just a Raider fan taking a shot at Mile High or anything, but definitely definitely louder than Mile High. I went to a Lions stadium. That was okay, but not as good as that. The Seattle is still the loudest I've ever been in, which is crazy because sound travels up with the roof, and it's still crazy there with the 12s. They're definitely holding it down, but Las Vegas definitely brought it. It's going to be very interesting as the season goes on, and this is my concern with the Raiders leaving Oakland, is the idea that, Vegas is such a tourist city, and you're going to have people visiting, and other fan bases are going to travel. And Baltimore fans travel pretty good, but I'm really interested in the future when you have teams like a Seattle that travel very well, a Dallas Cowboys, a New England Patriots, a Green Bay Packers, for example, how those fans are going to travel and how maybe they take over a line. Because even talking to some friends and colleagues, you could at times hear Baltimore fans pretty audibly on the television, watching some of the highlights back today. You could hear them a little bit at times. Obviously, we heard them in the stadium. I wasn't sure if that would apply to the television setting. But nonetheless, there still was a good amount of Raider fans there, good amount of Raider spirit there, lots of celebrities there. I had the privilege of passing from the Vegas Aces of Aja Wilson and Kelsey Plume. So that was very cool. For the game itself, experience was fantastic. The game itself, what a roller coaster. My biggest takeaway from the early side is not a great first half for the Raiders. I think Carr started 2 of 11, throwing a lot of drops by Darren Waller. He was targeted 19 times. I think a lack of a preseason definitely hurt the Raiders because you could tell there was a lot of rust there. And I think, too, losing Rodney Hudson under that center position. We saw that a little bit with the Packers this week with Lindsey not being there for Aaron Rodgers. But having Andre James under center instead of Rodney Hudson, that obviously affected the Raiders a little bit there. You could see even the way the ball was getting snapped and the way the Carr was taking it, you could tell he was a little bit uncomfortable with the way that the ball was coming out. They obviously figured it out later on down the road, but I think that's why you have a preseason game, to kind of get some of those things figured out. And, no Nelson Aguilar this year, so you could tell at times Carr obviously was going to Waller, but who else is going to be my receiver? He seemed to go to Hunter Renfrow a lot. I don't know if Hunter will be his go-to receiver. Ruggs got targeted, I think, 3 or 4 times. Brian Edwards obviously had a huge play down the stretch, so I think he's trying to figure out how those receivers will work, but he definitely had it dialed in with Darren Waller there, except for some of those drops. And I think that's stuff as the season goes on that you'll figure out. Lamar, just a fun player to watch live. But I really thought the defense and Gus Bradley, we talked about it when I was with Jason, how much of a difference Gus Bradley would bring to this team on the defensive side of the ball. And he really, really did. He's such a difference maker for what this Raider defense could be. Max Crosby really got at it. Yannick Ngakoue, you saw, had a few stuffs. It's unfortunate Gerald McCoy got hurt. I hope he's okay. KJ Wright had a few key stops. You could tell he was great. Carl Nassib, man, what a story this summer with him. And then comes in and gets the fumble there, forces the fumble near the end there to get the ball back after the first win. Now we get the second win. That was incredible. Just shocked that Lamar fumbled it 2 times, and you could tell in his presser he was obviously really derailed and very emotional about having those 2 fumbles. And you could tell, too, with Baltimore that he had his targets to Hollywood Brown. Mark Andrews did not really get targeted that much, which I was surprised with. Sammy Watkins got a few times, but you could tell he wasn't as comfortable with Tyson Williams and Latavius at times that he would be with J.K. Dobbins or with a Gus Edwards. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. I mean, Tyson Williams had that fantastic run, and Latavius got a touchdown as well. But as the season goes on, we'll see how comfortable he is with those backs compared to having a Dobbins there. But I also think the Raiders defense did a tremendous point. And, when Jason and I did our early preview of this last week, I said that the defense is going to be the most important thing for this team. That hasn't really been consistently a top 20 defense in a long time. And the one thing last year we saw it in that Chargers game, for example, and the Miami game, that they could get a lead, but then they really couldn't hold it. And this is the first year you finally believe that the defense can hold it, because, when the pass goes through Willie Snead's hand and the Ravens get the ball back, in the past years, being a Raider fan, you just assume that that team, whoever it may be, let alone having Lamar Jackson, were going to come down and score. And the defense really did their all. I mean, they almost, the Mark Andrews hit looked like they forced a fumble there. And then the next play, they come back and force Lamar to get the fumble, and then they come right back and hit that after a bizarre set with the kick and everything like that. Able to hit Zay Jones. Really happy for him to have his moment and get the touchdown. So it's going to be an interesting matchup against Pittsburgh. Two defensive teams there. Pittsburgh coming off a big win, knocking off the Bills. Raiders knocking off this Ravens team. For the Ravens, they go to Kansas City on Sunday night, looking to potentially be 0-2. And for the Raiders, they definitely are looking like a playoff team right now. I think the defense is finally there. Carr showed some clutch down in the 37 seconds. Baltimore fans were leaving the arena. They thought the game was done. And Carr hit two or three, I can't remember now, 2 or 3 clutch passes, though, to set up Daniel Carlson for that game-tying 55-yard field goal. So it's an electrifying night. It took me 3 cups of tea and an emergency to get my voice back after just unbelievable night. And for anyone that wants to experience, even if you're not a Raider fan, just to come see your team and to kind of witness this cathedral that Al Davis would be very proud with, I would admit to check it out. So it was a crazy game, but at the end of the day, it was just the way the Raiders won it, and just win, baby. And that's how Mr. Davis will be proud. Me and Jason will probably talk more about it in the coming days here, but I wanted to kind of get a quick hit. Thanks, everyone. You can find me also on the Fresh Take Network, and I am the voice of the Dinos and the State Trojans basketball. Until next time, cheers from Las Vegas.
It's gonna hurt. We're gonna fight.